So now we're going to discuss about the follicular phase. Remember, the follicular phase is going to happen inside the ovaries and is a part of ovarian cycle. Now, the follicular phase extends from 5th day of the cycle until the time of ovulation, which takes place at the 14th day. Maturation of ovum and development of ovarian follicles is going to take place in this phase. Now, the ovarian follicles are granular structures that are going to form in follicular phase. They are present inside the cortex of ovary. Each follicle consists an ovum surrounded by the epithelial cells, namely granulosa cells. The follicles gradually grow into a matured follicle through various stages. These stages are primordial follicle, primary follicle, vesicular follicle, and matured follicle or Graafian follicle. Now we're going to take you through all these stages and the changes that are going to occur in them. In primordial follicle, at the time of puberty, both the ovaries contain about 400,000 of the follicles. The diameter of these follicles is about 15 to 20 microns, and that ovum is about 10 microns. Each primordial follicle has an ovum which is incomplete and is surrounded by the granulosa cells. These cells are going to provide the nutrition to the ovum during childhood. Well, the granulosa cells also secrete oocyte maturation inhibiting factor, which keeps the ovum in the immature stage. All the ova present in the ovaries are formed before birth. No new ovum is developed after birth. So you need to remember this point. Well, at the onset of puberty, under the influence of FSH and LH, the primordial follicle starts growing through various stages, and it's converted into the primary follicle when the ovum is completely surrounded by the granulosa cells. During this stage, the follicle and the ovum increase in the size. The diameter of follicle increases from 30 to 40 microns, and the size of the ovum is increased about 20 microns. The follicle is not covered by a definitive connective tissue capsule. So, if we quickly remember this, the changes are taking place during primary follicle are 3. Proliferation of granulosa cells is going to occur, the size of ovum is going to increase, and the onset of formation of connective tissue capsule is going to occur. Now, the primary follicle is going to convert itself into a vesicular follicle. Vesicular follicle, under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone, about 6 to 12 primary follicles are going to start develop. So there are 3 kinds of changes that are going to occur in vesicular follicle: granulosa cell changes, changes in the ovum, and the formation of a capsule. First, the proliferation of granulosa cells is going to occur. You see the layer of granulosa cells in this ovum? A cavity called follicular cavity or antrum is going to form between the granulosa cell, and this antrum is filled with serous fluid that is known as liquor folliculi. With continuous proliferation of granulosa cells, the follicle size is going to be increased, and the ovum is pushed to one side, and it is surrounded by the granulosa cells, which forms the germ hills or cumulus ovorus. Well, the granulosa cells which line the antrum form membrana granulosa. Quite tricky term, but you need to remember it. Cells of germ hill becomes columnar and form corona radiata. Now you must be wondering what changes in the ovum. Well, at first, the size of the ovum is going to increase and its diameter increases from 100 to 150 microns. The nucleus is also going to be larger and vesicular. Cytoplasm is going to be granular, and the thickness around the ovum is going to be increased and is known as zona pellucida. A narrow cleft appears between ovum and zona pellucida, and this cleft is known as perivitelline space. So now, what happens in the formation of a capsule? That spindle cells from the stroma of ovarian cortex are modified and form a covering sheath around the follicle. The covering sheath is known as follicular sheath or theca folliculi. Theca folliculi is also divided into 2 layers, theca externa and theca interna. If we talk about the theca interna, then it is going to secrete additional sex hormones. for example, estrogen or progesterone. And if we talk about theca externa, it's going to become capsule of developing follicle. Means theca externa is going to form the layer around it, and theca interna is going to secrete the hormones for the proper functioning. So now, the next step is the formation of Graafian follicle. The Graafian follicle is said to be the matured ovarian follicle with maturing ovum. It is named after a Dutch physician and anatomist named Reiner de Graaf. Changes taking place during the development of Graafian follicle are the following. Well, the size of follicle is going to increase from 10 to 12 millimeter. After that, it extends through the whole thickness of ovarian cortex. At one point, the follicle encroaches upon tunica albuginea and protrudes upon surface of the ovary. The protrusion is going to be named as stigma. Then the follicular cavity becomes larger and distended with fluid. Ovum is going to attain the maximum size. Zona pellucida that we talked about earlier is going to be thick, and the corona radiata is going to be shown prominently. Small spaces filled with fluid appear between the cells of germ hill outside the corona radiata, and these spaces weaken the attachment of the ovum to the follicular wall. Because the ovum has to get out of the ovary. Then, theca interna becomes prominent and its thickness becomes double with the formation of rich capillary network. So, what did we learn in the follicular phase? Well, our ovum is going to be matured through 4 stages. These stages were primordial follicle, primary follicle, vesicular follicle, and then it's going to be a matured follicle. After learning all about it, now you must want to know what happens in the regulation. So let's get started. Okay, so what happens in the follicular regulation is going to be explained just right now. So the biological clock is responsible for triggering the cyclic events in the pulsatile secretion of GnRH at about every 2 hours. The mechanism of this release is exactly not known, but you just need to remember that the pulsatile secretion is going to occur of gonadotropin-releasing hormone every 2 hours. Okay, so after pulsatile release of this GnRH is going to stimulate the secretion of FSH and LH from the anterior pituitary. So the release of these hormones is going to trigger few things inside this whole cycle. LH is going to induce the synthesis of androgens from theca cells of growing follicle, which we just talked earlier. After that, FSH is going to promote the aromatase activity in granulosa cells of the follicle. The aromatase activity means the conversion of androgens into the estrogen. So it also promotes the follicular development inside a follicle. Okay, so estrogen is going to be responsible for the development and growth of the matured or Graafian follicle, and it's also going to stimulate the secretory activities of the theca cells. Then after that, estrogen is also going to exert a double feedback control on GnRH. And LH also gives the final touches to the follicles and secretion of progesterone. So initially, when estrogen secretion is moderate, it exerts a negative control feedback. And this negative feedback is going to inhibit the secretion of GnRH. And this is going to lead to the decrease in secretion of FSH and LH through negative feedback. And then this period of follicular phase, when a large amount of estrogen is secreted by the maturing follicle, it exerts a positive feedback. And this is going to increase the GnRH secretion, resulting in the secretion of large quantity of FSH and LH. And this in turn is going to facilitate the whole growth of Graafian follicle, and then the estrogen is going to show following signs. For example, the increase in number of FSH, LH receptors on the granulosa cells, and the sensitivity of these cells is going to increase, and the LH is going to be give the final touches to the Graafian follicle, and it's going to stimulate the estrogen secretion, and at the same time, the stimulation of theca cells to secrete progesterone is also occurring. So, the whole scenario is going to repeat itself, because every month this follicle is going to be made once again, and again and again. So the cycle is going to repeat itself. The negative and positive feedback are going to occur, and the cycle is going to go on. So this was all about the regulation of follicular phase. So stick around as we're going towards the proliferative phase and its regulation.